Hello, everybody, and welcome to my fireside once again. For those of you who haven't seen me before, my name's Sheila Kinninmouth, and I'm a storyteller based here in Fife. Now, the story I'm going to bring you today is another one of my tasty tales, but this time it's a story that I came across many years ago when I was first starting out as a storyteller. I found it in a book called Tales on the Tongue, which was produced by the Scottish Storytelling Centre. And it's a book full of stories that have been given by some of the most wonderful storytellers. The one I'm going to tell you was contributed by Russell McClarty. But as he said, it's a traveller's tale. And there may somewhere be a version by Duncan Williamson himself, although I've never found it in any of his books that I have. I must admit, this story was one that I used to tell more often to adults than I did to children. But I have been telling it to children recently, and older children certainly enjoy it. And the littler ones, well, if they get the joke, they enjoy it. But they enjoy doing some of the actions as well. The story's called The King's Dinner. Now, you see, Andra was a servant to the King of Scotland. And he wasn't a high up servant. He wasn't an advisor or a footman or even a gardener or a cook or anything like that. No, he was what they called a humpher. That meant it was his job to carry stuff about. You see, in those days, kings and queens owned lots of castles, and they would move from one to the other depending on the time of year. They would maybe spend a few weeks in one castle, then they'd pack up and move to another castle, and then they'd pack up and move to another castle. They were always on the move. And when they were moving, it was Andra's job to pack up all the stuff from the kitchen, all the pots and pans and plates and cutlery and mugs were all packed into big kists, big chests, and he had to carry them. He had to carry them out from the kitchens, out from the castle, and put them on the carts and on the carriages, ready to be taken off to their destination. And when they weren't moving about, when they were in the castle, he had to carry stuff about the castle, especially the food. Every evening, when it was time for their big evening meal, it was his job to take the food from the kitchen up all the stairs to the great big dining hall where the king and the queen and maybe his guests would be eating. The folk in the kitchen would cover these big wooden trays with all sorts of food, and they were heavy, and it was hard work to carry them up the stairs because sometimes the stairs were quite narrow and they were winding, so you'd be going round and round and round until they got up to these big halls. Well, one time the king was having a special feast. Anybody who was anybody had been invited to this feast. And so there was a lot of food. Well, Andra was in the kitchen and he got the first tray to take up. And this tray, the first course, consisted of pies and pastries. There were every kind of pie you could think of on this tray. Pork pies, mince pies, steak pies, game pies. There's maybe even a Anning and Bridie in among them. And it also had sweet pies, sweet pastries, full of apples and pears and plums and all kinds of fruit and all kinds of custard. Well, he picked this big tray up and he began to walk up the stairs. Plonk, 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 plonk. Up he went, round and round and round the spiral staircase, until he came to the great hall, and he laid the tray down on the table in front of the king. And the king would have a good look, and then he would decide what he was having, and then all the guests would get thrown in as well. Meanwhile, Andra had to stand there watching them eat. Now, Andra was always hungry. You see, by the time he'd taken all the food from the kitchen up to the king, cleared up, taken it all back again, there was hardly anything left for him to eat, especially once the folk in the kitchen had had their share. That's why he was always hungry. So he watched as they ate and they ate. And when they'd finished that course, he went away back down to the kitchen again, ready to bring up the second course. And the second course was fish. Every kind of fish you could think of was piled up onto this tray. All the fish from the lochs and the rivers, like the salmon and the trout and the perch, and even some wee minnows. And because they were near the coast, there were sea fish on there as well. Haddock and herring and cod and even some mackerel. And then there was the shellfish, crabs and lobsters and prawns and oysters, and probably a few whelks as well. Anyway, it was all piled up on this tray, and off Andrew went up the stairs again, carrying his load. Up and up and up he went, round and round and round the spiral staircase, until he got to the great hall, and he laid the tray down in front of the king. And the king had a good look again and decided what he wanted, and then all his guests would get tore in. And again, Andrew had to stand there and watch them stuffing their faces, eating their fill, and all the time his belly was rumbling. And when they'd finished that course, away down the stair he had to go to fetch the third course. Now, the third course was birds, roasted birds. And in their days, any kind of bird was fair game. If it had wings and flew, then it could be caught and roasted. And so on this tray there were wee birds, like robins and sparrows and larks, and bigger birds, like pheasants and ducks and pigeons and blackbirds, and even a swan and a crane. Well, he picked this tray up, and off he went again up the stairs. Plonk, 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 plonk. He was getting a bit tired by this time, and the smell of the food was making his mouth water. So about halfway up, where there was a window with a big wide windowsill, he stopped for a minute, and he put the tray down just to get his breath back. But as he looked at the food, his stomach was rumbling again, and his teeth were almost dripping. His mouth was watering as he looked on this delicious feast. And then he thought to himself, the king will never notice, will he? No, I can't do that. No, I'd be in trouble if I touched it. But the temptation was too much for him, and he found himself breaking off the leg of the crane and eating it, and then throwing the bones out the window into the moat below. Then he folded over the skin so it would be less noticeable. And with his appetite suppressed for a wee while, he picked up the tray again and went stomp, stomp, stomp up the stairs and laid the tray down in front of the king. And again the king had a good look. But But then the king looked at Andra and said, Andra, come here a minute. Oh, yes, Your Majesty. What would you like? Andra, have you been eating my food? Oh, no, Your Majesty. No, 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 I wouldn't do that. No, no, I know better. No, I wouldn't touch your food. Are you sure, Andra? Yeah, definitely sure. I haven't touched anything. Because if you're telling me lies, Andra, I'll have you thrown in the deepest dungeon. Oh, no, I'm not telling any lies. I haven't touched a thing. Well, Andra, can you tell me this? Can you tell me why that bird there has only got one leg? What bird? Said Andrew. What bird? Where? That one. Out there. Why has it only got one leg? Oh, said Andrew. Your Majesty, do you not know? You know, kin. That bird is what we call a crane. And cranes only hae one leg. You're telling me lies, Andrew, said the king. No, 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 I'm not telling you any lies. You better no be, said the king. I'll prove it, said Andra. I'll prove it. If you come with me tomorrow down to the loch, I'll show you that cranes only have one leg. So that's why the next morning at dawn found Andra and the King of Scotland and about half a dozen of the king's guards walking down towards the loch. It was a misty morning, so at first they couldn't see anything. But as they walked nearer the water, the mist began to lift. And at first they saw the ripples on top of the water. And as they got closer, the mist lifted completely, and there they saw a flock of cranes, all standing on one leg, as cranes do. And Andra turned to the king and says, There, Your Majesty, see, look, I tell you, cranes have only got one leg. Well, the king looked at Andra and then he moved his hands apart and he began to clap as loud as he could. And when he did, the flock of cranes rose up and with flapping wings they flew over. And as the king and Andra looked up, there they saw two legs hanging down from each of the birds. Andra, I tell you, you were telling me lies. Guards, grab him and throw him in the deepest dungeon. But Andrew wasn't going to be beat. And he said, Oh, Your Majesty, wait a minute. Wait a minute, please. You know, if you had just told me that you wanted the bird on that tray to have 12 legs, all you had to do was say, and I would have clapped my hands. Well, the king laughed at that. The king laughed and said, Andra, you're far too clever to be such a lowly servant. From now on, you're going to be one of my chief advisors. And from that day on, he was one of the king's chief advisors. And he never, ever, ever had to carry anything again. And he never went hungry again either. And that's the story of the king's dinner. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you liked that story, there's more stories on my Facebook page, and some of them are tasty tales, and some of them are homespun tales. And I'll be back on Monday with another homespun tale. Bye for now.